On a quiet afternoon in the middle of summer, I found myself sitting in the den of my home in Springfield, a small town where everyone seemed to know each other's business. The house was filled with the gentle hum of the ceiling fan, the sound of cicadas chirping outside, and the occasional creak of the old floorboards. I had just taken down an old box from the top shelf of my closet, a box that hadn't seen the light of day in years. Inside it was something I hadn't touched since childhood, my old wind-up toy, a little tin horse on wheels that clattered when wound up and released. It was silly, really, but that toy held memories that were woven into the fabric of my life. My late father had given it to me when I was only 6 years old. He had said, "Emily, one day when you're older, you'll understand that the smallest things can carry the biggest feelings." I didn't quite grasp it then, but over time, I realized what he meant. That toy wasn't just metal and paint. It was a link to a man I had loved and lost, a bridge to my childhood that sometimes felt like a distant dream. I sat on the carpet with the toy in my hands, winding it carefully. The little horse squeaked and rattled as the gears inside woke up from their long rest. When I let it go, it stumbled forward clumsily, just like it used to, before toppling over. I laughed softly to myself, the kind of laugh that comes from nostalgia mixed with a touch of sadness. And that's when it happened. The door opened suddenly without a knock, and in walked my nephew, Jacob. Jacob was 16, tall and lanky, with that restless energy that seemed to buzz through every teenager. He had come by the house because my sister, his mom, had asked me to watch him for the afternoon while she ran errands. He had always been close to me, more like a little brother than a nephew because of the way our families were intertwined. He paused when he saw me sitting on the floor, the toy horse tipped over by my knees. Aunt Emily," he said, a little confused. "What are you doing?" I froze for a second, then chuckled at how strange it must have looked. "Playing with an old toy," I admitted. "Your grandpa gave me this when I was a little girl." Jacob walked closer, his sneakers squeaking slightly against the hardwood floor. He crouched down and picked up the toy, studying it. "This thing looks ancient, like super old, but kinda cool." "It is old," I said with a smile. "Older than you, that's for sure." He wound it up, released it, and laughed as it clattered a few inches before falling again. "Wow. Toys today are nothing like this." And in that moment, something shifted. What began as a private moment of nostalgia turned into an unexpected bridge between generations. Jacob had always been into video games, phones, and gadgets, and yet here he was, amused by a simple tin horse that could barely move without tumbling. I told him the story of how my father had bought it for me from a small antique shop downtown. I described the way Dad had wrapped it in brown paper, tied with string, and presented it to me like it was the most important gift in the world. Jacob listened closely, his usual distracted teenager demeanor softening. "You really miss him, huh?" he asked quietly. I nodded, my throat tightening a little. "Every day." Jacob didn't say much after that. Instead, he sat with me, winding up the toy again and again. For a while, the house was filled with the simple sound of its little wheels clattering across the floor and the echo of shared laughter. The hours passed slowly. As we sat there, I realized something important. Moments like these are rare. Jacob had been growing up so fast, and I often worried that I was losing touch with him, just as I had lost touch with parts of myself. But in that afternoon, surrounded by the echoes of childhood, we found common ground. When my sister, Laura, came to pick him up, she found us sitting cross-legged on the floor, still talking. "What on earth are you two doing?" she asked with a laugh. "Playing with history," Jacob said proudly, holding up the toy horse. "Did you know Grandpa gave this to Aunt Emily when she was a kid? It's like a family treasure." Laura's expression softened as she looked at the toy. She remembered it too, though she had been too young to understand its meaning back then. That night, after everyone left, I put the toy back into the box. But this time, I didn't tuck it away on a hidden shelf. Instead, I left it on the dresser in my room where I could see it. It wasn't just a toy anymore. It was a reminder of love, of family, and of the power of small moments to create big connections. Days later, Jacob came back over and asked if he could see the toy again. He seemed fascinated, not just by the object itself, but by the stories attached to it. And so began a new tradition. Every time he visited, we'd take the toy out, play with it for a while, and talk. Sometimes we'd talk about my father and his stories. Other times, Jacob would open up about school, about friends, about the pressures of growing up. I realized that the toy wasn't just helping me hold on to the past, it was helping Jacob navigate his present. The summer stretched on, filled with these little sessions of laughter, reflection, and connection. And when autumn came, bringing cooler air and the smell of falling leaves, I knew that toy had given me something priceless, a chance to bridge the gap between generations, to connect with my nephew in a way I hadn't thought possible. I often think back to the day Jacob walked in suddenly and found me playing with that toy. At first, I had been embarrassed, afraid he might think it was childish. But instead, it became the start of something beautiful, a bond strengthened by the simplest of things. Sometimes, life surprises you in the most unexpected ways. And sometimes, all it takes is an old toy to remind you of who you are, where you came from, and how deeply you are connected to the people you love.